Evening. Following the introduction of 20 miles per hour speed limits for vehicles in Wales, should the Scottish Government implement a new default speed limit rather than its current policy of a more gradual rollout?
Lorna Slater.
I mean, that's been a Scottish Green policy for a very long time. My colleague Mark Ruskell was campaigning for a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit throughout Scotland for many years. I'm glad that we're able to start rolling this out in Scotland. It's absolutely important for safety, for pollution, and for the wider climate emissions.
500,000 people in Wales have signed a petition against it. How are you going to take the people of Scotland with you on this?
I mean, we're already doing this in Scotland. As the audience member points out, Wales have decided to do this in a sudden way. We're doing it in a more phased way. Hopefully that will allow people to come with us. I certainly know how much safer I feel walking around in the streets when cars are going much more slowly. They're able to look around them more carefully. And that safety, as well as the air pollution, I think is really important.
Craig Hoy?
Look, I think I've spoken to many communities in East Lothian and the Scottish borders who are very grateful the fact that their village or their town now has a 20-mile-an-hour limit. I think what we need to recognise here is the importance of local democracy, and rather than it being Lorna or myself that make those decisions, I think the councils have a duty to consult local communities and then to find out from them what kind of speed limits do they want. And not every town or every village necessarily needs a 20 limit on every single road.
Isn't that just confusing? I mean, do you not need a national policy so everybody understands, as they've done in Wales, what the limits are?
But I think if we go down the route of actually asking residents and having local democracy, we empower local people and we'll raise awareness of those speed limits. But I think fundamentally, I mean, Lorna has talked about creating 15 or 20-minute neighbourhoods and talked about the importance of taking these sorts of measures. I think we've got to also recognise the distinction between what happens in our towns and our rural communities as well in terms of roads policy and transport policy more generally. I think if we do that, then we can reflect the fact that, yes, there are big changes taking place in relation to transport movements in towns, but I don't think we can forget our rural communities in this process as well.
Would people welcome it here in Rutherglen? Let's find out. Man on the front row.
I was actually going to ask a slightly different question, because we've been speaking about the cost of living crisis so many times tonight, and yet our Parliament has been spending time on what's not the most important question. How democratic is it that a small party with only 7 MSPs out of 129 MSPs in Parliament is able and permitted to divert our parliamentary time to discuss and waste time on policies that are not in the SNP manifesto and not supported by most of the people in Scotland?
Well, they're holding Stephen to ransom. They're holding Stephen to ransom.
Just on that point, Lawrence, I mean, it's been estimated it's going to cost in Wales, I think, 4.5 billion over 30 years, this speed limit. How do you respond to that?
To respond to the audience member, I'm so proud of what we're doing in the Scottish Government. It's something that we don't see anywhere else in the UK.
Deposit return scheme, GRR?
That was on your manifesto, Craig, the deposit return scheme. We were just delivering what the Scottish Parliament asked for.
And so badly mismanaged by Lorna Slater that fewer than 20% of producers signed up to a scheme.
Craig, that's
so badly mismanaged.
Inaccurate.
So badly mismanaged by Lorna Slater that would have pushed our drinks industry to breaking point.
That's not true, Craig. It would have been up and running a month ago, and it would have been great.
Well,
it was shut down by the UK government, who are short-sighted on environmental issues and don't give a crap about litter on your street.
Hang on a second. You still haven't answered this man's point here. Is the tail wagging the dog here?
Tail's wagging the dog.
We're working together in the Scottish Government. It's a cooperation agreement. So 2 political parties who have different views on many issues have agreed to work together to roll up our sleeves to tackle child poverty, to tackle the climate crisis. And I think this is actually what voters want to see. Rather than the shouting and attacking across the room, to see us working together on things that really, really matter. And that does include things like Scottish independence, because we want to set out a vision for a better future.
It's good to be back on debate night. Just hang on a second. Back to the question, 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, Anna Sarwar. Are you happy with them?
Look, to be honest, I think it's one of the good things about devolution, where different parts of the country can try things and you can learn, you can see the evidence and you can see whether it makes sense to replicate. We led the way, for example, in Scotland with the smoking ban, and that was then replicated in England and Wales.
Do we need to speed up the slowdown in Scotland is the question?
I think the 20s, 20s work really well around our schools. I think you have to look at the evidence. So I would be pointed towards the evidence, to be honest, rather than taking a purely ideological view on that. Just go back to the other question about the tail wagging the dog. Nobody voted. It wasn't in the SNP manifesto to put income tax up for people earning over £28,000. It wasn't in the SNP manifesto to put council tax up for 1 in 4 households by £740 a year in the middle of a cost of living crisis. It wasn't in the SNP manifesto to waste £188 million on the deposit return scheme when the new tax rises will raise less than £100 million. It is not on people in this community and across this country to have to foot the bill and pay higher income tax, higher council tax, to foot the bill of SNP incompetence and failure. It's not the case. And to put it on top of a Tory mortgage bombshell. So I take the point Craig makes about the local candidate. I don't just hope that the Tories get thumped in this by-election. I can't wait for them to get thumped in the next general election, because we need to get rid of the whole rotten lot of them and get change in this community and right across our country.
Alex Cole-Hamilton.
So I'm a Liberal. I believe in localism. I believe that the decisions around road safety should be devolved and exercised where they work closer to the people they serve. I live in Edinburgh. I represent an Edinburgh constituency. We've had 20-mile-an-hour speed limits for many years now, and it works, and it's road safety. But what I get frustrated about is the culture war that develops around this. This becomes an assault on motorists or an assault on drivers. And it's linked, I think, in large part to the question we had at the start of the question about the programme about climate change. And the fact that Rishi Sunak is very much like that, the emperor in that fairy tale who sees this crowd of people dashing in one direction, says, where are my people going? I must lead them there. And that he is following public opinion, following a few hundred votes that saved the Tories bacon in Uxbridge. And he's starting to think in that desperate way. The captain of the Titanic may have felt something similar, scrabbling around for a means of stopping the ship sinking, that this might be it. Well, I'm sorry, but this is a culture war of his creation, and it's important, especially on things like climate change and sometimes around road safety, for politicians to lead public opinion rather than just to follow it, to persuade people through our democratic debate and forums like this of the importance and the benefits of sometimes quite unpalatable politics. So to come back in a roundabout way to the very start of this question, yeah, I mean, this is about local government, about what works best for your community, and it shouldn't be about the culture wars of the Conservative Party.
Let's hear from our audience on this. Man with the beard.
Like the whole time during this show, you guys have used, basically every time you speak, they'll use it as an opportunity to like enter party bashing the whole time.
It's politics.
And none of you have the humility to just admit sometimes you don't have all the answers. Practically every single time somebody asks you a question, after about 2 sentences, you're already blaming someone else across the panel, like half the time. It's kind of boring.
Stephen Flynn.
When it comes to 20-mile-an-hour zones, I'll probably fall into the space of not necessarily having the strongest opinion in the world on this. Just to tie in with the previous question there. Look, I think it's based upon proportionality, and it should be based upon what communities want. There's some areas where it makes sense to have it outside of schools and hospitals. Does it make sense in some village communities? Yes, of course it does. Does it make sense everywhere? Probably not. But there needs to be an element of proportionality based upon evidence.